Hello beautiful people, it's Mai here from Nintendo Life, and today we're reviewing Dispatch on the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by the lovely Jim Norman and made into a video by me. Now without further ado, let's get stuck in. As a big old superhero nerd and a fan of Telltale's narrative adventure games of old, it's fair to say that Dispatch piqued Jim's interest when it made its episodic arrival on PC and PS5 last year. Still, he took a punt and held back on purchasing because it simply had to be coming to Switch at some point in the future, right? Well, Jim of the past, come to Switch consoles it has. Coming from Ad Hoc Studio, formed by 4 former Telltale employees, hoping to capture the episodic magic they had with the likes of The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us and Tales of the Borderlands, Dispatch drew us in with top-notch writing, stellar voice work, and a visual style that will look right at home in an animated TV drama. Let's just say it didn't let us go until we reached its season finale. Now, it's not going to pick up any prizes in the gameplay department, but Dispatch is every bit as wonderful on Switch 2 as we hoped it would be. The game follows Robert Robertson, aka Mecha Man, an Iron Man-type man in a suit, bar the billion-dollar backing, who, after his robot suit is dramatically ripped from his clutches, is offered the chance to lead a ragtag band of villains on the mend at the superhero Dispatch network. Right from the jump, you'll notice a fair few influences. There are shades of the superhero loses his power trope we've seen countless times before, and the team of reformed villains, the Z-Team, or Z-Team, naturally brings the likes of Suicide Squad or Thunderbolts to mind. There's also more than a touch of Invincible in some of the visual stylings and adult themes. But through all of that noise, Dispatch manages to feel fresh. It's only right we shout out the writing first, because, this script rules. The quips and sight gags kept us giggling throughout, but damn, did we not expect these characters to get half as much development as they do. Folks were quickly drawn to the heroes' undeniable good looks at launch. In fairness, I personally thought they were all pretty fit. But it's their personalities, their growth as people, not just heroes, that make them far more interesting than a set of chiseled abs. Take Chase, for example, Robert's childhood babysitter, whose super speed abilities have sped up his aging process, rendering him an old man before even hitting 40. He's as potty-mouthed as anyone, and if the 18+ age rating wasn't enough of a giveaway, this is not a game for little ears. But underneath that rough exterior, there's a real sense of pain and fear of reaching a premature expiration date. Across all 8 episodes, we became equally attached to Invisigirl as she struggled to put her past behind her, Phenomenon and his post-breakup spiraling, and Blonde Blazer with her desire to do right regardless of the cost. If it sounds rather grown-up, then that's because it is. Select cartoon superhero media like Invincible or 2019's Harley Quinn have juxtaposed child-friendly visuals with gore, sex, and swearing. And Dispatch similarly wears its convention defiance on its sleeve. Indeed, the first episode wastes no time dropping some F-bombs, discussing dead dads, and throwing some good full frontal in there for good measure. The Switch 2 version mostly stays true to its edgy design, with some caveats which might water down the experience for some. The visual censorship setting from the PS5 and PC release, which gives you the option to cover any rude bits with an obnoxious censor bar, isn't present here. From private parts to middle fingers, everything is automatically covered with no option to remove. A particularly steamy scene at the start of episode 4 also takes place in complete silence, whether you have the profanity censorship toggled on or not. Personally, we don't think it takes anything away from the experience. The scenes still exist, just with a few strange bars with often hilarious placements, but it's odd that we can't choose to remove the restrictions. Jim did reach out to Ad Hoc to ask why the setting had been removed, and was told the following. Different platforms have different content criteria, and submissions are evaluated individually. For our Switch release, we worked with Nintendo to adapt certain elements so Dispatch could be on their platform. Simple enough. Of course, the writing was on the wall for this one all along. Yet, if if Cyberpunk's detailed character customization can slip through uncensored, we don't understand why Dispatch is forced to make omissions. The plot remains untouched, mind you, which is great because our love of the characters is the driving force behind our decision making. Much like the team's back catalogue, Dispatch lives and dies on its dialogue trees. Some options are inconsequential, but the vast majority are met with a little message on the top corner of the screen as a reminder that your choice, good or bad, will have consequences. Certain story beats are set in stone though, but we were pleased to see just how much influence we held over the journey. Even the less important decisions rewarded us with some cracking unique dialogue for taking the path less travelled. That dialogue really sings thanks to one of the most stacked voice casts in recent memory. Anyone from Hollywood big hitters like Aaron Paul of Breaking Bad and BoJack Horseman, and Jeffrey Wright from Boardwalk Empire and Westworld, to YouTube stars Moist Critical and Jacksepticeye is involved. And you can't forget the immensely popular D&D wizards at Critical Role. Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham and Matt Mercer are also part of the cast. In short, you won't be bored during the cutscenes either, and that's good because Dispatch has a lot of them. Dialogue tree options are broken up by your dispatching work at the SDN offices, where the game turns into something vaguely reminiscent of a management sim. Calls come in with a different skill requirements, and it's up to you to pick the right hero for the job. Successfully completing jobs lets you enhance your hero's skills to have more control over the situations you're putting them in, and you can even train them to learn unique abilities. We soon began to mould the team to our liking, utilising unlocked skills rather than base abilities to answer more calls and shift the odds in our favour. Suffice to say, we became far more engaged in the call-out tactics than we expected. Dispatching heroes with controller inputs is a little fiddly and feels more suited to mouse and keyboard, but we soon settled into the rhythms of using the D-pad to select a call or hero. Please note though that the mouse mode is not available in the Switch 2 version, unfortunately. Luckily though, touch controls have been implemented for handheld play, which is a very nice touch indeed. Short hacking minigames also appear while Robert is on call, tasking him with moving through a virtual maze without being caught or timed out. While it lacks the depth of the hero management side, it was a wonderful change whenever we got tired of comparing the team's mobility or vigour. But the beautifully animated story sequence are the real meat here. You can opt to play in either cinematic or interactive modes, the latter of which includes some mostly pointless quick-time events for you to input in select combat sequences. It's a fine enough way to break up the watching if that's your cup of tea, but we quickly turned them off to just watch the action play out instead. After all, how often can you say that you've binged a game? And just as a final brief note on performance, it all plays swimmingly on Switch 2. We wouldn't expect something like this to be too demanding on Nintendo's latest, of course, but a stable 60 FPS went a long way to convince us that we're tucking into a juicy TV show. So in conclusion, thanks to this sublime writing, fantastic voiceovers, and a level of animation you'd usually expect from a big budget streaming series, Dispatch is the kind of superhero drama that draws you in with the sexy characters and funny one-liners and hooks you until the bitter end with the potential of its ever-changing arcs. The lack of any visual censorship options on Switch is a strange one, and some will undoubtedly find things lacking in the gameplay department. But we're already gearing ourselves up for a potential season 2. It won't be for everyone, but if you're like us and it clicks, it really, really clicks. Is it too soon for a rewatch? We here at Nintendo Life give Dispatch on the Nintendo Switch 2 a 9 out of 10. Now, I suppose this is the moment that I give my own personal thoughts. Now, I've been following this game somewhat closely since it was released a few months ago, and I've been trying my hardest to avoid all the spoilers out on social media, but much like Jim, I'm a massive fan of superheroes and of the old Telltale games, and when I found out who was actually attached to the project, I had a really, really good feeling. Something about branching narratives with consequences really drew me in, and that's likely because I have a hankering for RPGs, and of course, TTRPGs, much like Dungeons & Dragons. Coincidentally, I probably wouldn't have heard of Dispatch if I hadn't known that Critical Role had backed the project and potentially pulled it out of development hell. Initially, I was a little bit unsure about how I would feel about the game and what to expect rather than, the standard multiple dialogue options, but I honestly felt like the story and the humor was right up my alley, and it reminded me of the TV show The Boys. And yeah, basically I was cackling straight from the get-go. I also feel like it's incredibly refreshing playing a game that is unapologetic about its coarse language and its clearly adult themes. I know it's already been mentioned in the review before, but I honestly found it a little bit odd that the visual censorship toggle had been removed from the Switch game. It was just really quite baffling, if I'm honest. I wasn't aware that the option was available even until after the fact, but I guess in a way having the random censor bar show up still made me laugh. I started to get confused when I saw just a middle finger being censored, but that's for another time. That was definitely off the mark. And I understand that not everyone is really comfortable with nudity either, but to me this just felt really odd, especially with other 18 rated games available on the Switch that aren't censored in comparison to Dispatch. Saying that, censor bars aside, I had a really great time with Dispatch. And also not to be an old horse, but the hacking minigames were a great way to break up the dialogue and dispatching. However, sometimes, much to my own detriment and attention span, I would sometimes forget about the timer and go in a little bit of a tizzy. Just typical me. But I guess that's an excuse to go back and replay it, eh?